Hello everyone and welcome back to Rebooted MCU. Today we are here with Rebooted MCU Phase 7 Part 2. In today's episode we are going to be covering Captain America Passing of the Shield, the third project of Phase 7, and Wonder Man Nefarious, the fourth project. As always, make sure to like, comment, share the video with a friend, subscribe to both me and the members of the Rebooted MCU creative team, Howd Aspect, Adrian Man Ray, Bluey, Light Visions, and I Am Groot. But anyways, not going to keep this intro super long, let's go ahead and jump into Captain America Passing of the Shield. Phase 7 Part 3 is Captain America Passing of the Shield, and it takes place in Universe 2031. The project opens up inside Avengers HQ as we see Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, played by Chris Evans, Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan, and Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie, sparring against each other in the training facility. While Bucky and Sam appear to be in the best shape of their lives, it is obvious that Steve is not moving as well as he used to, and also lacks the reflexes he had in his prime. As the sparring session comes to an end, we see Cap gingerly walk towards the living area as we see the Daily Bugle, hosted by J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, who updates New York on a new program launched at the White House earlier that day. The program in question was spearheaded by Vice President Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and is called the Super Patriot Program. A program where members of the United States Armed Forces would undergo a new procedure that would give them the abilities similar to that of Captain America. It is also where the first soldier to have undergone this procedure is revealed. John Walker, aka the U.S. Agent, played by Wyatt Russell, who will act as a government-sanctioned super soldier. Concerned with these revelations, Steve calls S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Maria Hill, played by Kobe Smolder, and asks if she has any information related to the Super Patriot program. Hill says she does not, but promises Cap that she will do her best to obtain information for him. We then see Maria Hill along with Agent Colin Muldowney, played by Billy Harris, attempting to gain access to files in Washington, D.C. related to the Super Patriot program. After nearly being discovered sneaking around the White House archives, Hill and Muldowney uncover classified documents related to the program. As Hill reconnects with Steve and the gang, a few shocking discoveries are uncovered. First, the Super Patriot program was never approved by President Ross, played by Harrison Ford, meaning that Val somehow went behind the US president's back. Second, the man behind the program is an old foe of Cap, Johann Fenhoff, aka Dr. Faustus, played by Jason Statham, an expert in the field of aerostatics and former Hydra ally. He was brought in by Val following a raid on Camp Lehigh, where a packet containing his information was discovered. Faustus, who managed to remain alive to this day through the use of a gas that slows the aging process, was given the chance to avoid prison if he agreed to create a gas capable of granting those who are exposed powers similar to that of the super soldier serum, a proposition that Faustus gladly agreed to. Third, and most shocking, Hill claimed that the document contained information about a super soldier who was created after Captain America by the name of Isaiah Bradley. Bradley was the sole test subject in a project known as Project Rebirth that took place in the 1960s, where he was given a new variant of the super soldier serum against his will. Despite his numerous accomplishments, the US government did their very best to keep his existence under wraps. After Hill reveals that Bradley is still alive, Cap devises a plan. He is going to travel to Washington, D.C. to confront Val and Faustus, while Sam and Bucky will travel to the Bronx to find out more information from Bradley. We see Steve arrive in Washington, D.C., where he manages to convince Chief of Staff Sharon Carter, played by Emily Van Camp, to set up an appointment to meet with Val. Upon confronting Val and Faustus, Steve demands an explanation as to why the United States government is preparing to create a new batch of super soldiers when the United States is enjoying peacetime. Val laughs at the notion that soldiers aren't needed and explains to Cap that she firmly believes in the philosophy that might makes right. And because of this, she will not allow America to sit and wait for a new global threat to occur before she takes action. Faustus also adds that Cap should be proud, as he is the one who ultimately created the idea of a super soldier to begin with. Angered by this, Cap prepares to destroy the machine used by Faustus to create super soldiers before he is stopped in his tracks by US Agent. As it turns out, Faustus' formula was effective, as the US Agent is shown to have power on par with that of Captain America. Feeling defeated, Cap agrees to stand by for now, but warns Val that he will not stop in his efforts to prevent the creation of a new batch of super soldiers. In the Bronx, Sam and Bucky manage to locate Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumley, and his grandson, Eli Bradley, played by Caleb McLaughlin. While Bradley is reluctant to discuss his past with the super soldier serum, he feels a bond with Bucky due to his widely publicized past and explains what happened. In the 1960s, Bradley was arrested for a crime he did not commit and was given the option of either spending the rest of his life in prison or taking part in Project Rebirth. Believing that Project Rebirth was the only requirement to be freed, Bradley accepted and was injected with a replica of the super soldier serum, a serum that has not been perfected since. As it turns out, the US government forced Bradley to become a mercenary, being sent all over the world to kill political enemies of the United States government. If Bradley refused, there was a constant threat that his family would be framed for heinous crimes that they never committed and would be thrown in jail for the remainder of their lives, meaning that Bradley would never have a chance to see them again. Knowing the backlash they would receive if information of his inhumane treatment surfaced, the US government forced Bradley to remain in hiding once his days as a first government-sanctioned Captain America were done and suppressing information about his existence. Not only that, Project Rebirth has continued to haunt Isaiah to this very day. After his son and daughter-in-law were killed in a car crash, young Eli was in dire need of a blood transfusion, something that Isaiah agreed to do in order to save his grandson. Unfortunately, the blood transfusion endowed Eli with powers similar to that of Isaiah, causing Isaiah to constantly feel like he inadvertently poisoned his grandson with the same chemicals he was subjected to. Isaiah tells Bucky and Sam that he firmly believes that he never got a chance to be someone like Captain America, because he was never given a choice and was forced to take up the shield, something he acknowledges Bucky understands all too well. Bucky and Sam then ask Isaiah and Eli to accompany them back to Avengers HQ so they can regroup with Steve to discuss next steps. While initially skeptical, following some persuasion by Eli, Isaiah agrees. Upon returning to Avengers HQ, Isaiah has a difficult first meeting with Steve, but the group decides to discuss how they will seek to move forward with the current problems they're facing. Steve says that Hill told him that she had one final plan up her sleeve and to meet her in Washington, D.C. the following morning. But before the group heads to DC, Cap makes a monumental decision, saying that his fight against the US agent made it clear. He no longer believes he is the one worthy to hold the title of Captain America and wants to pass the mantle on to the next generation. Looking at Bucky, Cap explains that he felt the mantle of Captain America represented an idea. The idea that someone would be there to pick up the slack for those who couldn't. The type of person that Dr. Erskine wanted. Not a perfect soldier, but someone who made the choice to be a good man each and every day. Cap tells Bucky that he knows the pain that he dealt with being forced against his will to act on behalf of Hydra. And knowing that the type of person Bucky is, Cap believes that Bucky should have the opportunity to show the world the good man he is, by assuming the mantle of Captain America. The speech moves Isaiah to tears as Bucky agrees to carry on the mantle. Sam asks Cap what exactly he's going to do now that he's no longer going to be acting as Captain America, something that Cap says he'll figure out after they make things right in Washington, D.C. After Bucky is fitted with his own Captain America suit, the group of five make their way back to the nation's capital. That morning we watch as Steve Rogers, Captain America, Falcon, Isaiah, and Eli Bradley enter the laboratory of Dr. Faustus. Val asks Steve if he wants a repeat of what happened last time when he barged in on government property without an invitation. Steve assures Val that this time he is not alone, as we see Maria Hill enter the laboratory alongside President Ross. Angered by Val's behavior, Ross tells Val that despite him being out of the country to take part in the new Joint World Defense Summit, she had no authority to override his order canceling the creation of new super soldiers, especially when global leaders as a whole are seeking to work towards a new era of collaboration and partnership. Val, angered but amused, stands in silence as Faustus begins reminiscing on all of his experiments, says that he always knew one day he would have a chance to let his experiments run freely. This is when Faustus walks over to a container hidden under a curtain. As he lifts up the curtain, he reveals a man lying in a comatose state, who is revealed to be Baron Blood, played by Michael Fassbender. Faustus reveals that he discovered the man shortly after the end of World War II, and noticed he was suffering from a strange disease. Despite his initial reservations to believe his findings, he concluded that the man suffered from vampirism, which allowed Faustus to test all of his creations on him with little worry about the impact on his body. Faustus tells the group that there are many strange yet remarkable mysteries shrouded in fairy tales that they were told as children, and surmises that if vampires are real, he can't even begin to speculate what other creatures could actually exist. Faustus chuckles and apologizes to the group for going on one of his scientific tirades, hits a switch on the capsule, awakening Baron Blood, and releasing him to fight against the group. Hill rushes President Ross out of the laboratory as we see the final battle of the project ensue, with Steve Rogers facing off against Dr. Faustus, Eli and Isaiah Bradley facing off against US Agent, and Captain America facing off against Baron Blood with help from the Falcon. Isaiah, despite his old age, has abilities similar to those of Steve, meaning he's able to keep up with Eli and the US Agent, despite being older than them both. Steve manages to defeat Faustus, with Eli and Isaiah landing a double blow on US Agent to knock him out. We then see Cap struggling to get the hang of using the shield as Falcon races around the room as Baron Blood screams for blood. The group react on their feet, thinking of how they could stop Baron Blood if he truly was a vampire, leading Eli to theorize that if they could manage to move the fight outside, sunlight might weaken Baron Blood enough and possibly allow them to gain the upper hand. Sure enough, as Cap leads the group outside, he watches Baron Blood begins to turn to dust. The lack of blood for many years combined with the exposure to sunlight was too much for him to handle. In the end, Dr. Faustus is arrested while President Ross makes a public announcement canceling the Super Patriot program, while also awarding Isaiah Bradley with the Presidential Medal of Freedom and sharing his story with the world. Also apologizing for the way Isaiah and his family were treated. Maria Hill helps Steve retire to a remote cabin off the grid as he tells Bucky and Sam that for now, he would like to enjoy some time alone, to figure out what it means to be Steve Rogers without carrying around the title of Captain America. The final shot of the project shows both Captain America and Falcon responding to a distress call from downtown New York as Bucky prepares to carry on Steve's legacy. So something new I'm going to do in these videos moving forward is that I will completely write out the most important scene of the two projects that will be featured in each of these new rebooted MCU episodes. And this is the first episode where I'm going to do that, and it just so happens that the most important scene is the first post-credit scene of Captain America passing of the shield. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, here is the fully written out first post-credit scene. We cut 5 days after the arrest of Dr. Faustus as we see Vice President Valentina Allegra de Fontaine enter the Oval Office. President Ross looks up and smiles. Val, what brings you into my office unannounced? Looks like we had our first disagreement today, Ross, and not just a minor disagreement about handling a PR issue. No, this one was pretty major. Well, we had a disagreement on policy. Nothing more. I know how you operate. So you going behind my back is no big deal. Just don't do it again, got it? Val smiles awkwardly as she pulls a gun from her coat. Oh, so it's that kind of meeting. You know that won't work on me, right? If you try that, the other guy's gonna come out and he isn't gonna be very happy. Well, lucky for the other guy, Samuel Stearns has had plenty of time in prison to theorize about a weapon that could bypass a gamma transformation and kill someone with your specific set of skills, and funny enough, he happened to make it for me. Stearns? What have you been talking with him about? You know, Ross, every day I recall my sacred oath that I swore, that I would support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Val cocks the gun as Ross chuckles. Yep, I made the same oath as you. I also swore to defend it from enemies, foreign and domestic, and by my calculations, stopping the US from getting in position to defend itself makes you a domestic enemy. Okay, this is getting a bit silly, Val. Aren't you acting a bit rash? I mean, think of all I've done for you. I believe you've lost your way, partner. You're a threat to democracy, so don't take it personally. I'm just doing my job. We watch as Val shoots the gun at Ross, the bullet piercing his skin and ravages his body. The bullet manufactured by the leader reacts with the gamma radiation, causing it to shut down Ross's body, and after a few minutes pass, President Ross falls to the ground, dying from the impact. We then watch Val easily remove the bullet from Ross's body, patch up the wound using a surgical kit, brushes off her dress, and screams, "Help! Somebody help! I think President Ross is having a heart attack!" The public would soon find out that President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross suffered from a massive heart attack during a meeting with his vice president, dying on the spot. Per the rules of presidential succession, President Valentina Allegra de Fontaine took office the very next day. In the second post-credit scene, Isaiah gives Eli the shield he used on his missions for the US government, and encourages Eli to use his freedom to continue their family's legacy, as Eli officially assumes the title of Patriot. Phase 7, Part 4 is Wonder Man Nefarious, and it takes place in Universe 2032. The project opens up on a montage informing the audience of what has been going on in Wonder Man's life since the events of the coming of Galactus. Wonder Man, played by Dev Patel, has continued to grow as a movie star in Hollywood, with the Archon movie being such a hit that it already has 3 sequels greenlit. While Simon ended things off with Alex Flores, he ended up marrying Wanda Maximoff, played by Elizabeth Olsen. The two grew close during Wanda's recovery in Camartage, and following a marriage ceremony officiated by Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, played by Tatiana Maslany, the two were married in 2031. We then cut inside the home of Simon and Wanda as we see them sitting in a living room, with Simon talking about how much work Neil Sorian, played by Ed Harris, and Phil Hickok, played by Jim Rash, have been putting him through. As he finishes this discussion, much as Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver, played by Evan Peters, bursts through the front door carrying 2 baby onesies and saying that he can't wait to meet his nephews. Simon and Wanda look at each other awkwardly as we see 2 teenage boys walk downstairs. They are revealed to be the children of Wanda and Simon, Billy Maximoff, played by Joe Locke, and Tommy Maximoff, played by Jacob Tremblay. This is when a shocked Quicksilver is told that Billy and Tommy were not born in the classic biological sense, as after Wanda and Simon discussed children, they simply appeared in the living room the next day. Quicksilver very awkwardly asks about their age, which Simon surmises based on the conversation he and Wanda had. During that conversation about children, Wanda mentioned that she did not want to have to deal with babies, and she has heard awful things about the dreaded period of time known as the Terrible Twos, and wished that she and Simon could just skip the baby phase and go straight to young adulthood. While the two lack a solid explanation for their children being created, Simon theorized it is something to do with Wanda's power, and her possibly having the ability to create organic, sentient life. This is when we are fully introduced to Billy and Tommy through their interactions with Uncle Pietro. Billy is polite, introducing himself with a handshake and mentioning how grateful he is to finally meet his uncle. Tommy, on the other hand, is brash, using slang when talking with Pietro, even challenging him to a race, as he was told that his uncle is pretty fast as well. Oh, right. There's one small detail about both Billy and Tommy I forgot to mention. They both share powers similar to that of the Maximoff siblings. Billy having natural magical control while Tommy has the ability to run at speed similar to that of Pietro. As Quicksilver and Tommy race around outside, Simon receives a call from his Archon co-star Ginger Beach, played by Mimi Keene, who informs Simon that they have been invited to a private island off the coast of Italy to celebrate the success of the Archon franchise. Beach encourages Simon to bring his family, a proposition that excites Simon as it would be the first opportunity to show the world of Wanda's true colors and help rebuild her reputation following the events of the birth of the Scarlet Witch. Ecstatic, Simon informs the family of the news as they begin to prepare for their trip. We cut to 2 weeks in the future as we see Simon, Wanda, Ginger, Billy, and Tommy on a boat sailing towards a private island off the coast of Italy. As they travel, Simon talks on the phone with Neil and Phil, informing them that he'll be out of town for a few days. This stresses Neil and Phil out greatly, as they both signed Simon up for countless interviews and television appearances during this time. Simon apologizes and hangs up as the group arrives at the island. Throughout the project, we would get flashes to both Neil and Phil attempting to stand in Simon's place and participate in his interviews and television appearances, having varying degrees of success in the process. Back at the island, Simon and his family are introduced to the owner of the island, a man who says to call him Mr. Stocks, played by Justin Baldoni. He begins talking with Simon about how much he loved the Archon films as the group walks around the island. Stocks explains that the island has been in his family for as long as he can remember, and because of this, he loves to throw massive parties for his friends and influential people to celebrate their accomplishments and achievements. This is when Stocks mentions that the sun is beginning to set, meaning that the party is about to begin, as he invites Simon and his family inside. That night we watch as Mr. Stocks kicks off the party with many unknown and unfamiliar guests being in attendance. During the event, both Wanda and Simon are given numerous drinks by the waitstaff, causing them to become inebriated. Even Tommy manages to slip a drink, in spite of Billy telling him not to do so. After hours of partying, Mr. Stocks eventually invites a very inebriated Simon to follow him to his office, as he wants to show Simon his prized piece of Archon memorabilia. Simon happily agrees, but as the duo walks away from the party, Simon is knocked unconscious. Waking up hours later, tied up in a laboratory where we see Dr. Kenneth Sturdy, played by Jim Howick, running tests on Simon. When Simon realizes what has happened, he easily breaks out of the restraints and informs the doctor that if he hopes to contain him, he will need to find something stronger than simple restraints. This is when Mr. Stocks reveals his true identity, as Lucino Nefaria, aka Count Nefaria, the head of the Magia and the man who has the remaining 50% of the ionic compound coursing through his veins. Simon then learns of Ginger Beach's betrayal and ultimately engages in combat with Nefaria, whose power rivals even that of Wonder Man. Nefaria reveals that he will give Simon two options. 1. Agree to undergo a procedure to give up his power in order for Nefaria to gain the full power of the ionic compound, or 2. Die along with his family at the hands of Nefaria. Simon says that Nefaria must not know who his wife is, saying that she can hold her own without needing Simon's intervention. Nefaria reveals that he is aware of Wanda and her power, which is why he has called in reinforcements to deal with Simon's family, a group known as a Lethal Legion. Back in the dining room, we see Wanda, Billy, and Tommy surrounded by the guests in attendance at the party, who are all Magia henchmen in disguise. Wanda, being inebriated, is unable to fully realize what is going on, leaving it up to both Billy and Tommy to show off their power and take care of the goons. After they easily dispatch of the lowly goons, the members of the Lethal Legion reveal themselves. Arthur Parks, aka the Living Laser, played by Henry Saga. Paul Duvall, aka Grey Gargoyle, played by Louis Garrel. And Samuel Baron, aka Black Talon, played by Aaron Pierre. This sets up an all-out brawl against Simon's family and the Lethal Legion, with Tommy using his speed against the impressive speed of the Living Laser, Billy testing his magical abilities against the strength of Grey Gargoyle, and inebriated Wanda attempting to use her chaos magic against the voodoo of Black Talon. As these combatants fight, Simon begins to realize that his powers could potentially lead to his family getting hurt in the future. This revelation coming as a result of being faced with both Galactus and now Count Nefaria, two beings who managed to withstand Simon's ionic capabilities. After a bit more contemplation, Simon agrees, much to the delight of Nefaria. As they prepare for the procedure, Nefaria recounts the years waiting to get his revenge against Simon, as his father's transgression against the Nefaria family and how he and his team were stuck in the shadows for years, waiting for their chance to take control of the criminal world. This is when Nefaria reveals what he will do with the full power of the ionic compound, claiming that he will bankrupt the city of New York and cement himself as the most powerful kingpin to ever exist, but then will turn his sights to California and the West Coast, eventually becoming so powerful that people far and wide will know his name. Realizing what it would mean for Nefaria to gain his power, Simon rejects this idea and decides to put his life on the line to protect his family. The battle between Wonder Man and Count Nefaria is epic, as Nefaria shows off an ability that the Grim Reaper was unable to attain, an ionic form similar to that of Simon. The combatants appear evenly matched as their fight takes place throughout the mansion, destroying furniture and even the building itself. As the duo eventually end up in the dining room, it is revealed that Wanda, Billy, and Tommy managed to defeat the Lethal Legion, as they watch Simon struggle to keep up with Count Nefaria. Nefaria, believing that he has gained the upper hand, boasts that the seemingly invincible man has turned out to be a fraud, and able to contend with someone who knows how to use his own powers against him. Wonder Man laughs, saying that he won't be able to defeat Nefaria alone, but instead, he will choose to rely on his family in order to gain victory. We then see Wonder Man, Wanda, Tommy, and Billy launch a family attack against Nefaria, with Nefaria being able to withstand the onslaught of attacks by the powerful family. In a last-ditch attempt, Nefaria attempts to unleash the full power of the ionic compound, but in the process, his body is unable to withstand the dramatic increase in power, leading to Nefaria killing himself, collapsing under the weight of his thirst for power. As Simon explains, he has learned to understand his limits when it comes to using his power, as the ionic compound is still capable of destroying a mortal body. As the group stands in the destroyed mansion, the group embrace one another, as Simon asks if anyone knows if they have an IHOP in Italy. We cut to a few weeks later to see Simon sitting in an operating room across from Vince Peretta, played by Paul Schneider, who holds the remaining 50% of the ionic compound extracted from the body of Nefaria. Simon has decided that in order to protect both his family and prevent anyone else from getting their hands on the ionic compound, he will take the remaining 50% of the compound and become a being of pure ionic energy. Peretta explains the risks of the procedure and warns Simon that he will potentially lose his humanity based on the dramatic increase in power. As Wanda, Billy, and Tommy watch on, Simon reassures Peretta that he understands the risks, but that he never truly wanted to be a hero. That is, until he met people that gave him a reason to want to protect others. Because of this, he has to do all he can to protect his family and friends. And as the movie ends, we watch Simon successfully receive the remaining 50% of the ionic compound, becoming a being of pure ionic energy, increasing his power substantially and making him one of the most powerful beings in all of the rebooted MCU universe. In the first post-credit scene, we cut to see Big C on the phone getting the news that Nefaria was killed and that he has now become the new head of the Magia. Big C calmly hangs up the phone and calls Tombstone, telling him that he is in charge now, that the Magia's operations are about to change dramatically. In the second post-credit scene, we see a man driving a motorcycle listening to a news report about the altercation on the private island, including the fact that Wanda Maximoff was present for the event, but the extent of her involvement is unknown at this time. The man laughs, saying that he has a feeling it won't be long until his boss wants to have a chat with Wanda. As his face suddenly bursts into flames, the man is revealed to be Johnny Blaze, aka Ghost Rider, played by Omari Hardwick. And that does it for Rebooted MCU Phase 7 Part 2. I hope you all enjoyed, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to members of the Rebooted MCU creative team. Of course, the next video that I post will be a Dragon Ball analysis video, but after that, if the video gets 40 likes, I will go ahead and drop Rebooted MCU Phase 7 Part 3, which will cover Armor Wars and Hercules, and Phase 7 Part 4, which will cover Fantastic Four and Doctor Strange Nightmare. Anyways, I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you all in the next video.